morning, everyone, and welcome to the PivotBoss pre-market video for Monday, October 27th, 2025. I am Frank Ochoa, aka PivotBoss. Happy Monday, everyone. Here's a look at the ES in the daily time frame. A gap up in Sunday evening after hours trading here, and currently holding those gains into the RTH Open, already up 0.8% on the gap up. This is following a very strong low, a very nice continuation last week, and now gapping up here into and beyond the 25% extension of this key range. This is very, very bullish. We do have a big week on deck here this week. We have core durable goods orders coming up here very soon, home sales, but later on in the week we have Wednesday, the Fed FOMC statement, the Fed interest rate decision on Wednesday. After that, Thursday, you have GDP, core PCE, and on Friday, core PCE price index, Chicago PMI, things like that. So big time week here. On a Monday, perhaps the lightest of the week. Today could be, after this gap up, mostly digestive, sideways with an upward bias. Even if we pull back to fill the gap, for example, this thing is still a bullish overall market right now. Again, from the weekly charts, it looked as though we have 2, 3, 4, maybe up to 6 weeks of strength that could be ahead based off of this strong low and the follow-up strong lows that we've seen here, and based on the continuation we had last week. So if we had week 1 rejection and week 2 continuation, we may have 2 to 4 weeks of continuation easy out of this to the upside if this thing wants to continue in a trending manner. So again, keeping an eye on this market here early this week and in a range bound fashion here early on. If we get a little bit of weakness, it could be defended here, and then looking for the rest of the week to provide some volatility, especially into the end of the week. Monday and Tuesday ahead of Fed week, on Fed week rather, can be a bit more digestive, and of course Wednesday, Thursday, Friday could be a bit more volatility that enters the chat. All right, looking at the NQ here, similar gap up for the NQ, similar hold into the RTH Open. Very bullish right now. This one's up 1 1/3%. Tech hot right now, and overall very, very bullish continuation to the upside, especially from that rejection the previous week. We had last week's continuation, now opening strong. So again, even if we were to pull back, this is a pullback from a position of strength, and will likely be defended for a continuation up as of right now. Again, later on in the week, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, to provide the bulk of the volatility. Monday and Tuesday could be mostly, again, setting up the early boundary, setting up the early range with an upward bias, and we could be looking at further expansion out of this key range, which starts to take us to the upside. Key range targets as far as 26.6 for the ES, or rather for the NQ. All right, looking at crude oil here, this one right now currently about flat, a little lower. It had a big time push to the upside here last week, and the big level to watch here early on this week is kind of like the 60 level. 60 has been kind of a bit of a zone here. 61.45 is the previous quarter's low. Even if we got a little bit lower into the zone, can it recover that previous quarter's low and make a move for 66s? That would be the next play. If you fail here at 60, then we may be resuming the downtrend. Again, we are in a seasonal bearish cycle right now, but this market currently dealing with some positive tailwinds in the headline cycle here that's driving this thing up. Do we get a little bit more upside? I think 60 is the key level here. If it can hold this on a pullback, we may have some upside ahead. All right, looking at gold futures right now, gold down 2%. Big time failure here, and this is a big time compression over a 3 range day basis. It is a high range compression, but still a good compression in a high volatility market. The breakout from this range could trigger the next big move. The expectation early on was that due to the failed low here, we have a shot to really break and make a move to the upside, likely to 4,300 in the near term. But if we fail to the downside, then the downside target here takes us toward 3,800, down below 39, 38 zone. So right now we're basically in the bottom end of the zone. Very, very heavy, but not quite breaking down just yet. So we have a 4-day large compression here. We still have kind of a bearish bias after a day one high here as well. How much pullback do we get? Again, not anticipating a full fall off here out of gold. Instead, anticipating finding the low and then establishing a large range to digest the recent price action. That's the expectation, at least as of right now, but we have a very clear range that if we get expansion from this range in either direction, it could be a significant move over a 1 to 3 day, maybe even a 5-day basis. All right, looking at the YM. Right now, the YM with, again, a rollover, not a rollover gap, but rather a gap up on a Sunday and kind of pulling back a little bit right now, but it is testing the overnight lows and trying to hold those lows at the moment. That could provide a short-term intraday opportunity from 47.6 back toward 47.750 or maybe even a bit higher, 800. But overall, again, we could be kind of range bound up here after this gap up. A Monday, Tuesday ahead of Fed Wednesday could be kind of setting up the early boundaries. Still in upward bias. Even if we fail a bit here into the gap, it could still be bid for a push to the upside. So not anticipating a full meltdown here. Looking for this market to establish early ranges ahead of Fed Wednesday, and then for volatility to finish the week Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. Looking at Bitcoin, this one's up big right now, 4%. 4% on a big push up. This right here was on the brink. We talked about it being on the brink here of really, really failing. It really needed to get higher to get the 115, 420s, and it got there. And what that did was it gave us a new large key range in doing so, and that is huge because now the next upside target based on this key range is 150K to the upside. The next downside target in a big way based off of this key range from a full 100% extension perspective would be 80K. So if we were to melt down here, 80K could be a very real possibility, and if we start to really break to the upside at some point, 150 is the next long-term target for sure, as based off of this new key range. So that's a big development right now. Now that we have the midpoint of that large key range though, we could go kind of sideways in this range for a bit. I'll mark that key range up. We already have this one right here, which it's currently responding to at the moment and approaching the midpoint of that key range. All right, looking at ETH, this one's up 5.5%. Big 5.5% push to the upside. Now this one was dying. You know, if we're calling this kind of an impulse move down, which it was kind of weird here, it did not quite get the low, but it did push through that mid and then squeezed. That, again, not how you usually draw it up, but it got there, and 42.42 is that mid, and now there's some big time targets that will be associated with that potential key range. We already have this large one as well. That's already in play. It's already respected to 25% extension there. The upside target here would be 5,800 right there. That's a big time level right there based off of just this key range back here. So that could be the next major upside target in an upside break. If we break down, 2,800 could be in play, and that's similar to Bitcoin right now. So a lot of volatility, a lot of potential here in both ways. Got to let it shake out a little bit, especially now that we've reached those mids. All right, that is it for now. We'll see how this plays out heading into the rest of the week. Good luck, trade well, and I'll see you in the trading room. Take care.